there's two types of knowledge. There's the knowledge you think you know, and the knowledge you know you know. We predominantly act in accordance with the knowledge we think we know. Now, to define what I mean a bit more, the knowledge that we think we know is the knowledge that we kind of support and defend, that we learn about. So basically, it doesn't matter what the source, it doesn't matter where it came from, it doesn't matter how trusty or how trustworthy the source is or was. It's still only amounts to knowledge that we've been handed, that we've been given. So because it's knowledge that we've been given, this kind of makes it second-hand, if you like, because it's knowledge that we've been given but we haven't experienced to be able to validate it. And you know, any kind of knowledge falls into this category. If somebody informs us of something, or if we read something somewhere, or if we view something somewhere, a film of some description, a knowledgeable film, anything like this, news or whatever, it's knowledge that's been given to us. So if I, for example, read a newspaper or watch the news or anything like that, or somebody tells me something, and I share this information, then I'm sharing information that I think I know. Now, in this respect, if somebody challenges me on this information that I think I know, then it's going to kind of put me in an awkward situation, an awkward position, because there is no depth to the knowledge that I think I know. It is only as deep as I have researched. So what this means to me is that if I'm told something and I want to get more in-depth information, so I read stuff and I research as much as I possibly can, and everything that I read, everything that I find, obviously is kind of second-hand information. It's not my information, it's information that I've found elsewhere, that other people's research, basically. Other people have took the time to write this information, I just took the time to find it. So I can fill my head with as much of this information as practically possible, as much as I can hold, as much as I can store, as much as I can memorize, and ultimately as much as I can reiterate to support my claims. So then I come to a situation where I pass this information on to somebody else. Somebody else wants, you know, doesn't quite trust the information that I'm giving to them. But I believe this information that I think I know. I set myself to believe in this information. So in setting myself to believe in this information, I now find myself believing that I need to support this information that I think I know. But ultimately, like I said earlier, the knowledge that we think we know is quite shallow. Ultimately, if I have no first-hand experience if I have no first-hand experience, no personal experience in whatever it is that I'm talking about, then sooner or later the chances are, if I'm up against somebody that chooses not to believe a word I'm saying or isn't quite convinced or whatever, sooner or later the chances are I'm going to get frustrated. I might even start to be rude or whatever. And this is kind of like a problem with what we think we know, is there's no depth. And with there being no depth, we must find other means to try to reinforce the knowledge that we think we know. Not only to other people, but to ourselves. Now, the difference between the information we think we know and the information we know is, if we know something, then it doesn't matter how much somebody wants to not trust our information or our knowledge or whatever. It's by the by, it's besides the point. Because we know in ourselves this information. We know this information as being a truth because of a first-hand experience. Now, it's fair to say that even though we have this first-hand experience, it's not always forced to be, another person isn't always forced to believe it just because we've had this first-hand experience. But unless our agenda is to make somebody believe, then it is far less stressful knowing you know something, because your mind is already at ease. So the only issue is getting somebody to believe you. Whereas the difference between thinking you know something, the issue there is not only the fact that you can't get somebody to believe you, but also the fact that you don't entirely know for yourself. So you're trying to make an argument on something, or trying to win an argument, if you like, on something that you don't really have all the information on. The knowledge that we know is it's liberating. It's liberating because once we know it, it's something that we no longer need to think about. It's something that we no longer need to consider as being a challenge for us. So we release ourselves effectively from having to think about it anymore. Whereas the knowledge we think we know, we struggle to move on from it, because there is that element of uncertainty. That element of uncertainty that drives us to keep trying to find out, that drives us to keep searching and keep searching, keep looking for truth, keep looking for more evidence to support what we think we know. When ultimately, if we was to enter a situation of, that was regarding knowledge that we thought we knew, and we entered the situation and all of a sudden this situation became first-hand. So now it moved from being an idea or a knowledge that we think to knowledge that we know. Now we're experiencing this situation. This is like our release from the situation. This is our liberation from the situation, because it doesn't matter what, how effectively what the situation is like. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. At the end of the day, it's that idea that truth is liberating. Sometimes it might be painful, but to know the truth is to be free from the thought of not knowing the truth, the burden of not knowing the truth. So the knowledge that we think we know, in reality, is problematic. It's problematic because we don't know. And, you know, this is the truth for the majority of our knowledge. The majority of our knowledge is knowledge that we think we know. And, you know, I'm not going to go into great depth here. You know, you can do that for yourself. But it's, you know, it's enough for me to say that, you know, knowing that we came through an education system, knowing that we spent so much of our lives in this educational system, you know, that in itself is enough to reinforce the idea that most of our knowledge is only what we think we know. Now, you know, I know, you know, even though I'm saying that there's knowledge that we think we know, knowledge that we know, knowing, to me, I know that most of our knowledge is what we think we know. So this no longer sits as a burden to me. I know this. And, you know, I know also that it's beneficial to be to become aware of it, but in becoming aware of it, again, we can find ourselves in a situation where we become aware of it, but then this awareness can still only be what we think we know. So it's to make the shift from knowing what we think we know is now what we know. And it kind of sounds paradoxical, you know, and one thing that I've started to realise about every aspect of life is, you know, it's like the way that we have been taught to perceive life is paradoxical. You know, I look at I see a lot of comments on some of the forums and stuff that I go on online, and you know, for the past few years, you know, a lot of people look at the films, the Matrix trilogy. They look at the Matrix and say, oh yeah, this is the Matrix, and blah blah blah. They look at how we're living today and all of this kind of stuff. Now, my personal observation is there's a lot about the Matrix films that people overlook. But it's the same attitude that I see in science. It's the same attitude that I see in religion. It's the same attitude that I see applied to so many different things. And the attitude is basically what we tend to do, and this is based on our educated mind and the knowledge that we think we know. What we tend to do is we tend to just take pieces of information that that sound good to us, basically, that reinforce the way that we think. Okay, now what this means is that we are retaining something. So I suppose it's like saying basically that we, from the moment that we're born into an environment that we adjust to, that we learn from. You know, we get everything from our environment. Our first and primary environment up until we get to school age is where we learn how to survive. This is where we learn how to survive the outside world. For me, I realise that this is the environment that gives us our initial mental programming. You know, I've heard it said, it's common, a common belief that we're hypnotised by school and by the media. But my personal perception of this is we were hypnotised before we went to school. we were hypnotized through society. Okay, we were hypnotized through our families and through our home environment. This was the basis of hypnotism, because this was where we learned how to survive.